Hi there, everyone. This is Mondian Astral Oracles, and I'm going to discuss synchronicity a little bit, and then I'm going to confer with the 12th dimensional quanta on this topic because it's a really hard one. Um, if you are in any way aware of the history or the theory or lack thereof surrounding this concept, it's essentially a concept or a word that Jung coins to explain something that he doesn't have an explanation for. And there's a lot of interesting examples, and you may notice as you go down the spiritual path and you get into high weirdness, as you could say, these occurrences of, well, coincidences, or let us say deeply related or meaningful happenstances in your life that cannot be uh, causally connected in a normal flow of time, they seem to increase exponentially. And so there was an interesting one, for instance, during the live stream with Archangel Raphael. And that was the same day I made the video about the Fae and the Elfin. And then I resaw, I watched the live stream the day afterwards, and I noticed there was an individual appearing from Denmark, my home country, who called himself Lurifax DK, and Lurifax or Lurifax is named as like the most stereotypical name that like a tiny leprechaun or a troll or something would have in a Danish child's tale. And if you look it up, it literally means someone who plays tricks, or you could also translate it to someone who causes mischief. And then he just posed the question, "How do I join your cult?" Which was also very interesting because, well, he was mirroring back the part I really deeply, well, hate is a strong word, but I hate this about my home culture. Like the Danes are afraid of anything that disturbs their their very limited horizons of what can I ingest, and what is my political reality, and who are my close surroundings, and how much red wine and vacation days can I amount, and that's all they goddamn care about. And I'll try not to. I could spend hours talking about this, but it's very interesting that as soon as Danes are confronted with anything spiritual, they mobilize this type of sarcasm. Which then of course was triggering to me in a lot of ways, and then I got to examine like my relationship to that all over again. But of course the very weird thing was that this thing happened before I did the Elfin video, so it was somehow anticipating that, but I did not become aware of it, of his presence, until afterwards, which again demonstrates it's this weird way of high synchronicity where it demonstrates that, okay, we were anticipating what was going to happen, but we you only get the proof of the experience afterwards, so we can really show you that what is going on. And what is this we? Well, this we is your higher self, and notice how the entities, they always term each other we, and to a lot of people this seems very strange. To me, it's actually the very natural way of of thinking about this, and it should also be, of course, it's called the majestic plural, and it would be sort of a conceited way to present yourself moving about in the world, to go, oh yes, yesterday we went to the grocery store and we picked up three avocados and and a bunch of bananas, but it's essentially a far more realistic term, or it's a far more accurate term, because you are a plurality of impulses and things, and the I is a lie, as I've stated before. The idea that you're a singular entity is a constant reduction that's being made by your mind to be able to fit in these patterns into something that doesn't overwhelm you. And so the entities always present themselves with a we exactly because they sort of they moved past that idea of singular identity. And when you think of all these entities I channel, they are essentially a part of me, that they're essentially a higher mind, um, and that's what you could think of as counterparts. But of course, the paradox is that when we move up into the layers of who we are, the we can say the higher fractals of the soul, then we are all connected. So we are all part of the 90 human collective, and we are somehow all also connected to all the other 90 collectives, and that's why I can channel them as a part of me. So that's very much the idea that we are actually this collective self, and it seems to be this uh, this soul part of you, this higher self, this higher mind part of you, who exists beyond the layers of time or sequential experience, who manifest these things, and they do so as a reminder that somehow something strange is going on, because of course the statement that you create your own reality is somehow nonsensical from the part of you that considers itself an I. Well, it's obviously not true, because that's why it's an interesting statement, because it's counterintuitive. So indeed, if that was completely true, well, it would beg the question. Then why aren't you just full on thaumaturgic? I think the name would be like, why aren't you constantly working miracles, just manifesting things out of blue air that you would prefer, and rewriting your physical circumstances and filling them up with things you were, and creating galaxies and worlds and balancing them around? Like, essentially, why wouldn't you be the full divine if you really did create your own reality? Because it's rather obvious that you find yourself in a situation where you actually perceive yourself as a receiver of things. That's your immediate experience. It's somehow a physical locus that's interacting with the greater world that's outside of it, and this is, well, in many ways not true spiritually, and that's of course why it is true with the law of attraction, that you create your own reality. But it's only true on a layer of analysis, or a layer of experience that's far beyond the idea of being an I. And to my mind, for instance, an entity such as Abraham Hicks is sort of using these, well, these deep realities to goad people, or use people's ambitions, desires, wants in this world, to sort of lure them into a place where they become aligned with the greater spiritual selves, which doesn't really care that too much with having three motorboats and a Lexus and a Mercedes in the garage, and everything. Because of course it also begs the question that however happy I am that you're here watching this, and I'm here talking with you, then why wouldn't you create a better reality than one where you had been stuck at home for 2 years, and it seems like that this would go on indefinitely until we start blowing things up? Or like, why wouldn't you create a world where there aren't impending ecological disasters, or there's warfare and starving children and whatnot? Like, why would you create this reality if it's really by volition? And I think this is it's very, very interesting how synchronicity plays into this, because this speaks to the element of destiny, and I think that's a very important. Like, I sometimes call it a path instead, but it's the idea of destiny, that there's something that you're being pulled into by that we part of you, which is eternal. And you can think of this, like, if you think of this in Platonic terms, or in the Neoplatonic terms of the Romanticists, the idea that, well, truth is beauty and beauty is truth, and so what is good, what is beautiful, and what is true are essentially identical. And here it's interesting that, well, if you take your life as an experience in that way, it sort of begins to look like a symphony. And let's take Beethoven's Ninth, for instance. Notice what it does. It actually uses some of the same themes, and then it varies them and repeats them with greater and greater intensity. And sometimes only some of the elements or some of the codes from a theme will appear as an underlying current in another theme that he's developing, and this sort of brings your mind to a deep sense of intuitive harmony, which is inherently beautiful and meaningful. And that is sort of what is playing out in our lives. It's these sort of meaningful themes that we have all selected, but replayed, so there can be both the element of simultaneity, that is identity above time, and sequence, that is like the procession of events. And this is something I'm taking from Ursula Le Guin's The Dispossessed, where she discusses these ideas in a fictional format. But this idea that they actually both have to exist, the idea of sequence and the idea of simultaneity. And to me, that very much appears symphonic. And what you will notice is then, as you move closer and closer to your own truth or your own destiny, these themes, they become more and more intense. That is, that they sort of seem to play out with a greater frequency, so you can really notice them. And that's what's happening with high synchronicity. And of course, it's also just. I think in modern spiritual context, it's sometimes just meant to use wish fulfillment, like, oh, I hope something nice would happen to me today, and then wow, something happened, which is well, far from the definition of the word. And of course, the idea of number synchronicity is interesting, because is that really, yeah, that's also synchronicity in a sense, but it's somehow just pointing to, again, the idea that you become aware of a harmony in what you actually perceive as the outside world, that seems to go beyond what is random, which is very interesting. And so I think, well, the question is, and what I'm moving into, and I'll be doing another video on soon, I think, is also the idea that, well, why then do we choose this? What are the quantum realities here? Are we in an infinite multiverse of infinitely multiplying timelines? Or are we in a space where it's sort of the highest point of consciousness that is seated, well, either in the future or above the time layer, that collapses the one reality that we need to experience collectively? Because you will notice, and this is unfortunately something that's coming forward, but when the Arcturians in the live stream the other day, they say that, oh, well, there will be the opportunity for a lot of people to check out of this timeline. What they're actually saying is that people are going to die, and that's, of course, not a very pleasant reality. But I do sense that this cataclysm is sort of upon us, and that's something that we are all intuiting coming forward. So I hope this was also sort of to clarify some of my own thoughts about it, but I hope the 12d Quanta can explain something about what's going on here. And I of course also hope that you took something useful from that. Blessings to you all. Our deepest love from Dimension 12. Our great consolation, comfort, and words of wisdom and certitude we offer to you in these changing times of trouble that you find yourselves in. And so many of you have also used these changes and upheavals to actually connect more to yourself, and you have experienced these meaningful encounters. You have experienced yourself drawn to information that might be hidden in plain sight, but that would have been incomprehensible to you or hard for you to understand or even seek out if you didn't have the feeling that you were guided to it. And indeed, if you are listening to this, you may feel that there has been an odd set of circumstances that have led you to listen to this sort of, well, unpopular communication in the literal term, the idea that not many will hear this, and though those who hear it are meant to hear it, you are always meant to receive everything. And of course, that's the idea of synchronicity. That is, when you experience that, it's a revelation that, well, everything is actually ordered. And this goes also for all the instances where you don't experience these types of meaningful coincidences. But why are these things ramping up? Well, they are indeed ramping up because you are becoming multidimensional. And becoming multidimensional, well, it may seem like, well, we are just taking in more and more light in our bodies. Well, we are sort of becoming more glowing or wise, but well, the idea is essentially that you're waking up to a new part of reality. And in this part of reality, death, which has been seen as a kind of switch or an either or, that you were either alive or dead, this is something that's becoming integrated into your being. And therefore, as this becomes integrated into your being, you begin to exist in more planes of existence at once. And this is only available to you as you realize that this type of, well, dense construction that you have called reality and that you have perceived physically, well, this is indeed a type of a more densely layered dream in which you are becoming identified with multiple points at once. So your ability to concentrate yourself both into the physical and the non-physical at the same time is really growing. And notice then that, well, also your take on these UFOs, these unidentified flying objects that you have been encountering, well, you have perceived these also as things in your outside world being manifested by outside beings, but many of these beings also reveal themselves to you as humans from the future or humans from other parts of reality that are coming back. And so notice that thousands of years ago, it was known, or it was well understood by ancient civilizations, that the spirits that they encountered in these strange realms in which they also traveled, these were indeed the spirits of the ancestors. And so the spirits of the ancestors are indeed human beings who have passed on into the other realms and then exist there and are able to also connect to this realm again. And notice how in this realm where there is no time, there is not much difference whether or not you are moving from the future into this now moment, or you are moving from the past into this now moment. That is, your ancestors are also your future selves. And when we speak of these cataclysms to come, that is to say, and we have not spoken of them in particular, but many beings have been mapping this out for you, and much of your astrology seems to bear witness to this fact that there are things going on that may require some types of great change and sacrifice, may require you parting ways with a lot of things. That is, the more that you can begin to identify with this part of yourself, this ancestral future part of yourself, for whom nothing is lost and everything lasts forever. Everything is simply flowing into a now moment, being condensed and then moved out. The more you will move into a greater state of happiness, contentment and understanding. See, it is not the loss that confounds you. It is instead, the incertitude, the fact that you are afraid to let go of what you have yet to understand. But as soon as you understand it, it passes from existence and new experience materializes. Notice that wherever you go in this time-space, even if you dematerialize, or even if you find yourself in odd physical circumstances, you are still focusing yourself into a preferred reality. And this is indeed the idea that you are a universe creating your own reality. This is completely true from a spiritual perspective. And this is what your bodies are learning as they move into these synchronous realities. We sense that it is helpful that this very complex, very difficult message that has been brought forward today, that it is cut short, but we are very happy to communicate more on this topic, and we hope that it has served some of you. Indeed, we know it has served some of you. We are always present in all realities. We are all ancestral spirits. We are your spirit, your soul, and your body. We are everything, and yet we are able to remain separate from you. As you, a concentrated point of experience, you possess the mystery of infinite regress. There is always a greater layer to the chamber of mirrors of which you find yourself in. Peace and blessings, much love from the heavens to you, our dear beloved human beings.